All right, we should be live now.
Okay, it's called to order the Finance and Audit Committee meeting for June 13th, 2024. Teresa, will you call roll?
Trustee Cook,
Here.
trustee Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Pandolfi. Trustee Wyckoff. Trustee Davis.
Here.
Yeah, four.
The county is going to be, she's supposed to be in line.
I apologize for interrupting. I was trying to unmute someone and I accidentally muted the boardroom. Would you please unmute the boardroom?
Hold on. Yeah, Cody, we're unmuted now.
Thank you, Brian. I apologize. I was trying to let you know all that Dr. Pandolfi was joining.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're asking for the agenda?
I need a second on the agenda.
So second.
All right, Teresa. Let's take the vote.
Trustee Davis. Trustee Pandolfi.
Aye.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Gray. I'm sorry. Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are online. Read them. There was one correction, but
I corrected.
she corrected us. So if anybody has any other changes? No other changes, then I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I move the minutes of the Tuesday April meeting be approved.
Teresa?
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Pandolfi.
Aye.
Trustee Cook.
Yes.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next up is project. Sorry. So give me 10 seconds.
I have one tomorrow. Have a tree that fell on
Sorry.
my neighbor's fence with the wind the other night.
Monthly financials. Jeremy?
Page. This is our combined balance sheet of governmental funds. The cash and investments and market adjustments at the end of April 2022 was 56.95 million. The same accounts at the end of April 2023 is 44.3 million. So that's a just over $12 million drop in cash year over year. Nothing else really to report on the balance sheet except that final bottom line says current year surplus deficit. The deficit year to date is 2.2 million. Last year it was a positive 5 million, so that's a 7 million over expenditures year over year. Move on to the next page. This is my property tax summary statement. The taxes collected from all three counties is just over $65.65 million. It's about 6.6% higher than the same time period last year. The budget for this year was $64.54 million, so we're 1.73% above our budget right now, with 1 month remaining. And last year, we had a budget of 61.29 million. We had collected 61.58 million. So we're about 0.5% higher in terms of budget to actual ratio a year ago. On to the next. One more, please. This is the general fund. As I just reported, our tax revenue is up about $4 million or 7%. over last year. Our total revenue is up 4.39 million, or about 8% over the same time period last year. Our personnel expenses are 2.9 million, or about 10% higher than they were a year ago. Library materials are just under 200,000, or just under 2% lower than they were at the same time period. Library programming is about flat, $7,000 difference from a year ago. And then library operations are up 1.36 million, or about 17% over the same time period a year ago. So all told, all of our expenditures are about 4.1 million, or 9% higher than they were the same time period last year. I think the biggest cost drivers are as we continue to finalize the capital plan and more buildings are coming online. We have more buildings open this year than we did a year ago. As we'll talk about in the budget, we'll have more buildings open next year than we do this year. And so those are some of the cost drivers, as well as increasing in personnel to keep up with our pay plan. Go back one. It's the capital. No one, go forward one, please. So, yeah, sorry. No problem. So this is the capital project fund, of which the lion's share is the capital plan, but we also have the reading rocket and the demolition of Harvey Jones. As you can see, the reading rocket was delivered, and we paid that invoice. So we're at 94% of the budget on the reading rocket for the year. The capital plan, which we have more detail on in another slide, is almost $12.6 million so far year to date. And we've paid almost $142,000 to the owner's representatives for the final two projects. And the Harvey Jones demolition, I believe, is almost final. There's one outstanding invoice we still have to pay. That building is obviously down, and we're finalizing those costs before the end of the year. So all told, the revenues and the transfers into the capital project fund are 10.33 million. Our expenses are 12.94 million. So we have a expenses over revenues and transfers in of 2.6 million for the year. The next slide is the grant and gift fund. I don't really have any comments on this unless someone else does. So we'll move on to the last slide of this, which is the internal service fund, which is our health insurance plan. The charges for services, which is predominantly the library paying the employee portion of health insurance, as well as the employee portion and the retiree insurance, is 4.1 million. We're about 91% of our budget. Operating expenses are 4.46 million. It's about 94% of our budget, but I will highlight that claims are actually higher than what was originally anticipated, which is one of the reasons why we have a higher claim number for the upcoming budget as well.
What's the cap for the year?
The cap of,
Well, these plans have a cap, have an aggregate limit. The problem is the aggregates are written on a calendar year because that's the policy. But if you look at this, do we have a number that we use for a cap? Or is the excess of the claims on current policy as opposed to carryover of 23? Because I don't remember 23 being that far over. And it's sort of the problem with this presentation is you're mixing two policies. And so, when you get to the end of 24, and I don't remember what that number is. I'm going to say it's in the 4.5 million range, but is Jennifer online?
I think so.
Anyway, I don't need you. I think that's something we probably
We'll get that
would,
number for you.
something we should, we'll look at. keep track of. Okay. Moving on.
Those are all the comments. We've got the other reports filed. If anybody has any questions.
The only one is the personnel schedule, because the one that was posted is March. Is that right?
Yeah, let's see. Yep.
So nothing's been updated.
Is it Jennifer, are you online?
That's the head. Been updated. That's good.
Cody, can you hear us?
That's just the wrong one. I can send it through to replace that one. I'm not sure what happened.
Thank you. So we'll get that updated.
The other schedules are up there are the disbursement detail, the investments, which really hasn't had much change. And so we're not selling anything with this same plan, continuing to roll off as maturities occur. And then the capital spending shows us what the 492 is. That your is that intended to stick?
For contingency?
Yes.
No, it probably will go down. Some of that contingency will be used for, the work we're doing at the Culinary Center. We talked about it at the building committee meeting. So we'll get a clear understanding of where we are after we get the quotes for that work.
So just for clarification, there's contingency in each of the ongoing projects. So the culinary center would be something new, correct? I think my question is of the projects that are wrapping up, which would be East Independence and Riverside, those are those contingencies that are got used or didn't get used. And then if we have if there's something in respect to the culinary center, I don't know what is available back then. This clarification in terms of where the dollars are coming from. I understand you're doing this, but those contingencies are, I think my question is about the contingencies on the other two projects. Or the ones that are wrapping up.
Well, we did draw on contingency. I do know for both locations. I mean, I can get a total of what was spent from contingency on each, in East Independence and Riverside. But those dollars sit in a bucket, so we draw down from that amount. So.
Well, again, just for clarification, if there were original contingencies in those project plans, it's just a matter of saying, we had, I'm gonna pick $1 million and you spent 300,000 and there's 700,000 left over. And then you had something else that you're planning. So the contingency on those projects either got spent or didn't get spent, and then you're reallocating some of that, I guess I'll call the available contingency, into another project. It's clarifying.
So you want to know,
I just want to know how we performed against the original plan on the two projects.
right, I got you. Okay, we'll look into that.
Got me any questions? I know you're
Michelle's online. So.
Michelle.
spot, but
No.
I heard you, but
I'm
yeah.
sorry, you both step in at the same time. Any questions or comments? Yes or no?
This is Michelle. No questions, no comments.
Okay. Then let's proceed to the budget and talk about both projected and then in the proposed budget. Jeremy, you can.
So, just a reminder that the draft recommended budget is out on board docs. And we've prepared a couple slides here to go a little bit more in depth for the general fund, which is where the majority of the revenue is in our budget. So the first page is really small on an Excel screen. I apologize, but we're comparing what the original budget was for the, or I'm sorry, we're comparing what the actuals were for the last completed fiscal year in the audit, along with the original budget for the current fiscal year, along with what we've actually experienced through the first 11 months of this fiscal year. And showing what our April projections were that are the basis for the budget document. So,
Well, just you say April projections for what period?
the current year.
For 23, 24.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
So the very top is the assessed valuation for the district, which would be all three counties. Those are then split out by county. Don't know if there's much to add there. The assessed valuation for 22-23 is what is the final assessed valuation. The 23-24 budget would be what the original projection was before the final assessed valuation came in. The 23-24 actual would be the final certified assessed valuation by county for the current fiscal year. So you see that there's about a 13.3% difference between the original budget and the actual numbers, which then correlates down to the next section, which is the ad valorem tax rate. You see dropped from 0.324 to 0.2911. The actual ad valorem tax rate. So that next section called property taxes is simply the math of taking the assessed valuation divided by 100 times the levy rate. So if 100% of the money came to the library, that's what it would be. 62.9 million the current year. However, under state law, we pay each county 1.5% as a collection fee. So that's factored out, as well as not everybody pays their taxes on time. So the net current taxes collected year to date match that schedule we shared a few minutes ago of 59.94 million. And so that is above budget by about 0.5%. The next set would be the back taxes that have been paid. The original budget was 2.1 million. We've actually collected 2.4 million. It's around $324,000, or about a 15% increase over the original budget estimate. The next one is called replacement pilots, but it also includes the financial, I just forgot it, investment tax, I think is what it's called. It's basically all of the other categories of property taxes. And so the original budget was 2.79 million. We've collected 3.28 million, which is about 490,000, or 17.5% above the budget. So when all those things are combined, the original budget was 64.537 roughly. We've collected 65.65 million, which is 1.1 million, or about 1.7% above the original budget projection.
Not the last question. Going back to the top section, you have the percentage change in the valuation. I'm assuming is that the 23 actual against 22 actual?
No budget.
Okay. I didn't check the percentages. I'm just curious as to real and personal are the exact same percentages. I find rather interesting. Is that right? Or
So 431 million on 4.5 billion is 9.56%.
right, it seems odd that personal property would go up exactly the same rate as real estate, but anyway.
Well, it's not going up because we're comparing it to budget. So the original budget for Clay County real estate was 4.5 billion. It was actually 4.9 billion, so that's about a 9.56%
Okay,
increase.
so the percentage changes against budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Change from.
Let's change that to. Well, I don't want to get bogged down in this because this is just comparing what we have against where we budgeted, and
Right.
what we have is higher than budget, so that I think lends some credibility to the calculations that were done 2 years ago when we set the levy.
Not sure I follow.
Well, when we set the levy, we did a detailed 2-year projection on expenses. And then we did some scenario modeling on what assessed values would be. So we said if the assessed value hits here and the levy's here, then we would collect X amount of taxes. And that included the collection ratio and I should say the collection ratio, which was about 94%. So, and that's how that's how the original target was set. So the budget, to a large degree, I think last year followed that. So if we collected more than that, then, we were on the conservative side of the estimates. How's that? In terms of what we projected. So, which is, if I'm doing budgeting, that's what I prefer to do. So that's why I said I think that lends some credibility to the fact that we, had a reasonable approach to the revenue projection. Okay, any questions on that? Ron, Bob? Okay.
Let me just, because I've seen some documentation or information. That sheet I can't seem to find. Is there a copy available? Right? If you want talking about, yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, what is the thing that's sort of interesting, and this is the play of a 3-county process, is Jackson County's assessed values went up substantially, which I think we all knew last year. Flat modestly, and Clay, was around 10, and I don't know how much of that is new construction. Because really for coming into this year, yeah, the new construction comes into play every year, right?
Right.
Okay.
And again, I don't know what all we're going to do today, but I still have, it's not a concern. Obviously we have a maintenance schedule that we tentatively agreed to for the next 10 years or so. I just want to make sure there's revenue for that. See anything that addresses that, but I know we've talked about it before, and I just want to make sure, and not all libraries are under the program right now. So
I think that's part of the budget discussion.
Yeah, I didn't know what we were gonna do today. but
Well,
that's
no, that's
exactly
what,
right.
that's, this is just kind of backdrop on rev. So Jeremy, proceed, if you will.
So the next page is looking at all of the revenue to the general fund. The revenue, property tax numbers just came from that other page. So yeah, unless you want to. The rest of the revenue is predominantly from, actually split almost evenly between grants and contributions. The grants being the state aid from the state of Missouri, the library's portion of the Missouri entertainers tax, and then E-rate reimbursements that are allowable for technology. And then the fines, fees, and other miscellaneous revenue. Majority of that is book fines, fees, and sales of old books. We also have facility rental, room rental, cafe rental, all the different rentals that we offer at our branches, passport revenue, and some other minor revenues. So just starting with the state aid to libraries. Last year, we collected $500,000. That was raised to $600,000 this year. You'll see we've collected $599,140. We were told by the state that that was staying the same, so our budget for next year will have that same amount. The Missouri entertainers tax is the same way. It was $160,000 last year. The budget did not change in the current year. We don't anticipate it will change next year, so 160 all around. The E-rate reimbursement is the one that's a little bit harder to predict. So we actually received $116,409 of reimbursements last year. The original budget was $120,000 this year. Back in April, we thought that'd be a little closer to $135,000, but we've actually received $193,000. And books, I think, kind of the same way. Last year, it was almost $37,000. We had projected it to be about $445,000 this year. We're currently at $442,000, so we're in line with our projection. Printing's a little under where we had projected. These numbers have dropped off for the last couple of months, but last year we had received $122,000 roughly in revenue from printing. The original budget was $114,000. Our projection was $125,000, and we're at $101 right now. So all told,
That's not a profit, right? I mean, aren't we just recovering costs mostly on those?
yeah, I mean, we don't make any profit. So everything's about cost recovery.
Convenience and cost recovery. So, all right, I don't want to bog down in the
So
details.
all told, we had fines, fees, miscellaneous revenue last year of $846,000. The original budget was $882,000. We goosed that up to about $896,000 based on what we were seeing. Year to date, we're at $880,000. So if you look at the total bottom line general revenue, the original budget was $59.9 million. We adjusted that to 61.5 for our projections, and we're currently at 61.8. So we're less than 0.5% off of our budget estimate, and we're about 5.75% roughly above last year. So do I have any questions? All right.
Is there an expense side this?
It's all in the budget document.
That hasn't changed.
So no. If you want to go to the next slide, I think. I just want to provide a recap of the budget process. Excuse me.
So you're saying it's, well, hold on, expenses, this is from whatever version I had, but the expenses were projected to be 58.7 million. So you're saying that number is about the same.
Just the general fund.
Yes.
Yeah, the general fund projected expenses are 58.68 million.
Okay. So same, the numbers is still.
Yep.
Same, okay.
So this schedule here we put together just to remind the public and everybody what our process has been. Back on March 19th, we presented that first look at the budget. That's essentially what you're looking at, steps 1 and step 2. If you recall, step 1 was that first initial request of staff to look at the budget with any unmet needs or any inflationary increases that they needed to make to maintain the service level that we currently have. There really wasn't any parameters put on it other than that. And that original budget was 66.5 million. You'll recall then that staff was asked to reduce that initial estimate to what we would consider a baseline budget, which is essentially what do we need in a bare bones scenario, so that we could start to carve out some of these new strategic initiatives that Aaron highlighted in his goals that you all approved earlier this year. And so that number dropped the budget to 61.7 million. So what you have before you now is the third step, which was presented on May 14th to you all, was presented at a public hearing on June 4th and remains unchanged today. That recommended budget is just over $66 million. And so the change from the baseline is about 4.3 million or 7%. I'm going to go to the next slide, again, focusing on revenue. This report was put together to compare the 3 elements of the property tax, as I like to call it: the tax rate, the assessed valuation, and actual revenue collected. So beginning with fiscal year 2018-19, going forward 5 years, you'll see that as the assessed value went up, the levy rate went down in accordance with the Hancock Amendment. Property taxes are the green line at the bottom. So just some notes to the chart that I put to help. The voters approved a tax rate of 40 cents that began with the 2017 tax year. The levy has been reduced based on the Hancock Amendment every year since, with the exception of in 2022, the board took a voluntary reduction. And you'll see that in the blue line drop from 20 to 22. Assessed valuation has grown about 40% over the last 5 years. That's averages out to about 8.19% per year. And then property taxes have grown about 15% over the last 5 years. This averages about 3% a year. And I put, just for context, that when you take the average rate of inflation over the last 5 years, it's been around 4.3%. So this chart was really just to provide some summary information about the largest revenue stream for us, which is the property tax. Moving on to the next one. So this chart is essentially the same format as the one we just looked at for the projection. However, it's for the budget. Excuse me. So the first column would be the original budget. The second column would be the projections that we made back in April, and the increase or decrease that we've currently received over that. The next column then is the actual proposed budget that you have before you.
Is that labeled correctly? It says 23, 24.
Where does it say that?
Right there. Yeah, so 23, 24 proposed.
Oh. Too many small cells. What did that fix?
So is that 24,
Yeah, it's
25?
24, 25.
Then what is the next column over supposed to be?
Comparing the 24, 25 to the projection. So in terms of assessed valuation, it's more art than science. We try to take into account the factors that we're seeing in the marketplace. Obviously, everybody knows that Jackson County has had a record year of protests. We don't foresee that changing, and so we want to make sure that our projections are on the conservative side, as Ford mentioned, so that we're looking hopefully at receiving more revenue than our projection, which is a much easier conversation to have than if we had
if we project a revenue that's unattainable, and then we're actually looking at cutting costs in a year or something of that effect. So, from my perspective, I view the library as a whole district. So from that regard, we wanted to look at assessed valuation on the real estate side as being within what our average assessed valuation growth in a non-reassessment year has been over the last 4 cycles. And then we were a little bit more conservative than that. So we're projecting 1.56% to the district. On the personal property side, we've seen that go down year over year. So we're projecting that the decrease as people continue to hold their cars longer, don't buy boats as often, et cetera, to be about a 3.6% decrease. So the overall assessed valuation is projected to increase about 0.68%. So as we've mentioned since March, we believe that in order to continue funding all of the branches, to continue or to start to provide a maintenance plan and to continue to ensure that we have adequate reserves, the levy needs to be restored. So the proposed budget has that levy rate at 0.3116. Obviously, we won't know what the actual levy rate is until we get the final assessed valuations from 3 counties. And so the Hancock Amendment could adjust that number up or down based on what our projections are. So much like the last schedule we showed you, the top line is if we received 100%, that'd be roughly $4.8 million or 7.76% over the current year. Once we factor in the collection fee that we pay to the counties and uncollectible taxes for the amount that won't be paid in the current year, it's about 4.37 million or 7.32%. We then made projections on back taxes and replacement costs based on what we've seen over the last several years. So all told, the property tax revenue in the 24-25 is 69.73 million, which is 4.4 million or 6.8% higher than the budget.
Ask questions now? Okay, if I go first. How did you, or what consideration was given to the Senate Bill 190?
Part of the consideration of Senate Bill 190 was added to that net current tax. And we added about, I think, 0.5% per county. We really have no way of counting. So,
Added or deducted?
well, added to the uncollected tax. So our actual collection rate is about 95.3%. If we were to add that back in, we would increase the collection rate in the current budget by 0.77%, which would be about $400,000. But there's just no data that can tell us. So again, we're trying to be conservative.
So the counties don't have any data that tells them what percentage of the property is
Owned by a senior.
yes. On vehicle values, you said, I know you made reference to that. But you still have vehicle values going up, as I think, and you took a fair amount off in Clay, or I'm sorry, Jackson,
Right.
but you have both Platte and Clay going up.
Yeah, again, based on what we were seeing, that they went up last time. So we're anticipating, I think, half the growth rate that they had prior assessment cycle.
Ron, Bob, Scheller, any questions?
Not yet.
Michelle, no questions.
Okay, then I guess we move on to the expense side of this. Oh, you have another one. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's go through that. Sorry.
So at the At the May meeting, we showed this slide, but it started at 2018 to be in line with that 5-year look that we're looking at. You had asked for to go back to 2016, so we've done that. So 2016 would be the last year before the voters voted to raise the rate. The rate was 31.53. So home, to keep the values the same, I basically deducted what the value would have been in those 2 years. So a home that's worth 150,000 in 2018, based on our values, would have been worth 143,000 in 2016. So that home would have paid $85.87 in taxes. But anyway, so the rest of the chart remains the same. I just added those 2 years. But just for an apples to apples comparison. So a home that's worth $200,000, if the mill levy stays at its current rate, would save about $7.80 a year, or about 65 cents a month. If we restore the levy, they would pay an additional $7.80.
On this value.
Well, that was on 200,000. Just to make it a little
Do we
easier.
know what the averages are?
I don't have the average value from the county 23.
I should say, do we know what actual averages are? By
No.
county? I understand what you did here. I just don't know how that compares to what the market, what's really going on the ground. So,
Right, well, I mean, that's why we call this a hypothetical. So, most people can take their home value, juxtapose it to this home value and see what those differences are.
well, the reason I ask is, I think new home construction now probably averages at least 3. 3 would be the low end. Because of what's happened over the last 2 years or 3 years with the inflation and materials, matter. The construction costs for just a basic home construction cost has gone up, I think, in excess of $100,000. So a $200,000 home 5 years ago is now a $300,000 home. I won't get into the rest of the market stuff because it's crazy. What was interesting, something I saw recently, was that lumber prices are back to where they were in 2018. I don't know what that'll do to house prices. So, but I don't think 208,000 is. And again, I'm when I look at data, I look at plat primarily, and I know Clay. Jackson has more commercial, I think, concentration and probably more multifamily. So when you look at a household number, it's lower. So I just think that'd be good data to have. The other thing I would just note on here is, so if you look at 2016 at $86 compared to 23, that was the 114, that's about a 33% increase in the taxes. In 2017, if I'm using your numbers, the levy increase was 25%. It went from 32 to 40 on the statutory maximum. And the actual increase you're showing there is 31%. So if I look at 16 against 24, it's 44. What you're proposing is a 44% increase over that 2016. Obviously, as you said, inflation has had an impact on that.
To your point, I would say the voters asked us to.
Well, and again, back to the original proposal was, and it depends on how you look at it. So I can say the budgeted, the revenues that the library was collecting in 2016 was 41 million, okay? So they approved a 25% increase in that, would put you in the range of 52 million, okay? You have, you have the combination of new construction coming on at a levy. So I don't, you know, I can come up with a scenario that looks at the actual dollars coming in as opposed to a pure levy calculation. So I don't think, I don't know that the, again, and we'll get into this in some later discussion about the dollars being spent. So I'm just pointing out that we're collecting 44% more than what was in place at that time.
And that's true, but I think it's also worth noting that the voters asked us to.
Well,
When you say it's a 44% increase, it gives the assumption that you're saying we've just done it without permission.
no. I'm just saying that the levy, the ballot was a 25% increase. So we're looking at a 44% increase. And again, people are gonna have a different view. I'm just stating what the numbers are. Okay.
And then the last sheet is essentially the same as the projection, just looking at budget. So the original budget for the general fund, as we said, was 59.9 million. The budget for next year is 66.2 million. The lion's share of that is the restored levy. So the overall budget is 7.6% higher general fund.
Okay, any questions on the revenue side? Michelle or Yummy, Bob and Ron? Okay, hearing none. I think the only other, at least. We have the budget document.
I mean, it's not in the PowerPoint because it would have been 45 pages, I think, but it's on Board Docs.
Can we pull up the short version? Talk from black screen. Or I don't want to refer to a black screen, we can avoid it. There you go. No, I have it in front of me. Oh.
Jeremy, do you know what page it is on the budget?
I'm not sure what pages I'm looking at.
Which document are we referring to? We can try to get it up on the screen.
Recommended budget.
Well, I thought there were two. There was a document, I don't know, probably in April, that was about, I don't know, 20 pages long. I think the one that's up there now is the full, what I'll call the public document.
Yeah, the first one was a summary. It's basically just Excel spreadsheets.
Do you want the summary from the April meeting?
The one that's up there now, they're the same numbers, but it's the.
It's probably on
That special board meeting.
That would be it. May 14th meeting.
Yeah, that's it. Should be the work session, maybe. No, that's the presentation.
That's
If
the
you
presentation.
go down to the where it said work session. It's the actual document. It should be.
You want the left one?
The left.
Let me save that. I just need to save it to mine.
We just open it up for now.
Yeah, I've got to save it so it'll go through the,
No, it's not on Zoom right now.
yeah, it's not on Zoom, so I just
Oh,
don't save
I
it
got
to
you.
my,
All right.
to my desktop here real
Sorry.
quick and open it. So give me just 1 second. Okay. What page are we looking for?
Scroll, well, I don't know, up or down, whatever you want to do. I want to get to the general fund. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 pages in.
The general fund page here.
Yeah.
Yeah, go to the next. Yeah, can you increase the size of that? A little bit more? Thank you. That'll work. And we've already talked about revenue. I don't want to go through that again. Can you scroll down and get the expense? No, sorry. I just meant to scroll down on that page.
Sure. Okay.
So that we can see the expenditures section on that page more clearly. Thank you. Oh, there. Okay. All right, when this was presented, I think and I'm going to raise the same questions again. The revenues, we're showing a budgeted revenue increase of 6.8. The biggest changes, and I'm not going to get into to the other pieces because I know some of that is driven by on the operating expenses by the number of branches, since we have new ones and new ones opening. It's really a question on the largest dollars are in the salaries and wages. But we're increasing our salary and wages by 7.6%. And compared to the 23 number of 24,636, that is about a little over a 15% jump. And is there some clarification? I guess I don't want to go in. I'm not asking to go into line by line on employees. I think I'm looking for what are the buckets for things like part-time increases on a percentage basis. What is the full-time percentage increase? I know we have new staff. Jeremy and Sarah both new on an annualized basis. So if I could put those, if I could say those, if those are the three main components, what are the dollars and the percentage related to each of those? And I'm not saying they're all of them, but those are the three I think about.
Jennifer, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I think we do that in personnel, but if you could just go over that.
Do we have a schedule? Like that?
What is that? What is the first column? Brian, can you scroll up a little bit? I'm trying to.
Oh, the first column is the 23 actual. Sorry.
It's 23, 24 projected.
So those four columns, the farthest one to your left would be the actuals from last year.
Okay.
The column just to the right of that would be the budget for this year. The column to the right of that would be the projection for this year. And then the farthest column to your right is the budget for next year.
Okay. I'm just pulling it up. Total dollars for full-time, the increase is 7.15%, and total dollars for part-time, the increase is 8.99%. Are you looking at what the existing staff salary increases are, or?
Well, okay, and just to repeat your numbers so that so you're saying the full-time percentage increase is 7.1?
Yeah, 7.15.
Part-time was 8.9.
Correct.
So does that 7.1 include new hires or new bodies, new full-time staff? Or is that strictly an aggregate dollar against an aggregate dollar?
It's kind of a challenge to answer. The full-time cap has not changed. So there would be new people like me that were reclassified from positions that occurred before. So I'm not sure how we can address that. The number of FTE is no higher than it was.
Okay, but I think one of the factors in the part-time is, if I'm right, is the Missouri minimum wage.
Correct.
And what is that? Is 25 been set, or do we even know?
For
what do you have budgeted for? What do you have budgeted for? What's in the budget for the part-time average pay increase?
It ends up being about $1 an hour. I think it's just under that and that's That would be for frontline staff and pages.
And what?
Pages.
Pages, okay.
So people that work at the desk and then people who shelf books.
Well, I guess I wanted to hear what everybody else has to say. My concern expressed at the board meeting hasn't changed any. If we start raising expense levels faster than our revenue can grow, that is going to create a problem. And that's not sustainable. That's,
Well, let me just, because I wasn't here, on that, this personnel, the salary study that was made and implemented. What was the cost increase in reference to revenue at that point in time?
salary study.
Well, I think there was a salary study that led to the adoption of personnel salary levels a year ago.
I believe that the increase from 22-23 to 23-24 was somewhere around 3 million total, whatever that.
Say that again, Jennifer. That's how much?
I believe it was somewhere around 3 million total, if I remember right, for last year's budget. I'd have to go back and.
So,
All right, I'm sorry, I'm confused now. So you're saying that the study that was done said we should raise salaries $3 million, or we did raise salaries $3 million?
The pay budget was increased. I'm just looking at it from at that perspective. The pay budget was increased by about $3 million, if we remember right, from the 22-23 budget to the 23-24 budget. And late in 22-23 fiscal year, in April is when the first results of that salary study was implemented.
So my question in reference to what you had said. So was there a discussion at that time about revenue increases generated enough to support that? I know it's approved, but so.
If I could just add.
Yeah.
So revenue is increasing 7.6%, but that's on $60 million. So it's about 4.6 million. And wages are increasing 7%, but that's 36 million. So it's only increasing 2.9 million. So of the 4.6 million, 60% is being dedicated to wages. The fact that the percentages are roughly the same is just a coincidence.
We're only talking about one component of the expenses. I mean, our total expenses are 65, budgeted $65 million. So
Right.
I'm just saying that when you start running expense increases faster than revenue, and if our statutory cap, if assessed values don't change, if your SB 190, if your personal property values come in flat, you'll be making some adjustments. Yeah. Or possibly making some adjustments. I just think,
which I believe
I'm not aware that the market is jumping, 9% in salaries on average. I think that's a concern I have. So
the presumption though then is that we were at market competitive wages when the plan started. And I think that's what we're trying to say is we weren't. So we were losing qualified staff because they were finding better paying jobs elsewhere. The library over the last several years has made a concerted effort to dedicate revenue to ensure that we're paying them fairly and as close to market as we can. with the recognition that we are a government that's limited by a tax road.
All things being equal. I think that's, I'm not a fan of salary studies and I understand how they're done. I think sometimes in the public arena, it ends up being a little bit of a game of quote unquote leapfrog. So I don't know, I don't know the details, just that I've seen the same thing at the municipal level in my area where they say, well, so-and-so is getting paid more, so we have to pay more. And I think the risk you run is that, you know, sometimes, you know, as you said, sometimes the market will tell you you're underpaying as opposed to a salary study. I think I'd rather follow the market than a salary study. That's kind of my view.
I wish salary studies are based on the market.
Well, but you're assuming people, so you're saying you're assuming all things being equal. I'm not sure a title, I'll give you an example. In the city of Parkville, and I looked at the salaries, the city clerk, you know, was moved up by 40% in her base, okay? Purely by comparing the title of city clerk in one place to the title of city clerk in another. And again, I'm not going to tell you what they do in a salary study, but I'm saying if it's purely based on titles and such, I can't tell you that's a fair comparison. Jennifer, I think there's some risk to that. But anyway, so that is one concern I had. The other one is we're looking at about a $3 million excess on current fiscal year. My numbers are right, about 3.1. Historically, that was moved into the capital fund in July. The budget proposed has that staying in the general fund with an additional 1.5 coming out of the budgeted revenues to go into the capital fund to start what I'll call the pay plan and to increase reserves for what I'll call your 10-year plan. Okay, so that could be jump started by 3 million. The other thing, for the record, is, and I said this at the meeting, we are, because of the investment decisions made a few years ago, and especially with rates at 5% now on short term, it's costing us about $1 million a year. And it's not helping us, but sometimes you have to slow down to get caught up on some things. So I guess I'm concerned that the board hasn't really discussed that at a detailed level in terms of that 3 million excess. My view, my individual view, is that that should not all stay in the general fund. I know you talked about not having to borrow money. To be honest with you, I don't have a problem borrowing money now that I see how easy it is, and in our cash flow, you know, we can't change the cash flow cycle. It's our fiscal year is statutory June 30, and the tax year is a calendar year, and that's not going to change unless, you know, somebody wants to go to Jeff City, but that's not going to happen. So, you know, the fact that we borrow money for 2 months and we let the taxpayers keep their own money, I think that's a good thing. Pretty nominal cost. I think we spent 23,000 last year. So that was a big wild card. And I know you guys did some things to change cash flow, which I, you know, commend you for doing. I think that was a big, again, big bonus to the taxpayers that they keep something around. So those are my concerns on this budget, and they haven't changed from the April board meeting. Okay, whenever we had it, not from April, but whenever the second meeting of the board was. Okay.
I'd like to continue from where I started. And I don't mind doing absolute value, so I think that's relative. The cost of a program, a cost of the study that was implemented about the time I came on the board, references personnel. And in fact, I said a month or so ago that I don't have any problem with Mid-Continent being a career entity, that people want to stay here for their working careers. But what I want to get to ultimately is how to afford a maintenance budget, which we've all talked about, and some of these buildings are getting older, and I forgot, what's the aggregate amount being proposed to be spent in the 10-year period?
Just under 40 million, I think.
Yeah, just under 40 million. So
Just under 30 million.
Yeah, 29 something.
Yeah, 29.4.
So I want to make sure that there's revenue available for that. You know, I do believe the roofs have to be replaced. Chuck pointing, these buildings that the taxpayers have agreed to and supported. In my community where I live, people swear by how great the libraries are. I just want to make sure they're maintained, and that's going to take X number of dollars somehow, somewhere. And I just want to make sure we have the 10-year flow of that. And probably at the end of 10 years, existing buildings that are not in the plan will have to be added to another plan. So I just want to make sure revenue is available for that.
I'm just agreeing. That's why I think we should move $3 million into the capital side and that's it.
And
I don't see a reason to keep that in the general fund. I mean, if you have your budget and you're satisfied with your budget, then that's sitting in the surplus. At least if it's in the capital side, it has some constraints on it and gets spent on the facilities. The other thing that's different in here, and I think you mentioned it, Jeremy, in the meeting, was that your building maintenance line item, which is on the next page, now has a $100,000 threshold. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
So historically, at least as I understood, that threshold was $50,000. So now we've moved in some larger expenditure items that were previously would have gone through the capital fund and the building committee that are now in the operating fund, general fund. So,
well, yeah,
and again, I don't know if these are things that have to get done or you're budgeting for contingency things that could occur. I don't know that we went through that in detail, but that's $900,000, right? $800. So that would have otherwise come out of the capital fund. So anyway, those are my two, those two things are my concern and with the budget. I don't know what else to say. Ron? Do you have any comments?
I guess not to the depth that the discussion has been so far, but upon reflecting and also a lot of reviewing of the previous meetings on YouTube, I kind of came up with just personally a 3-step approach that all 3 steps have to be met. And one is basically all this information comes from sources other than the committees of the board. And to basically, do I have confidence and trust in the individuals who present this information, which is, quite frankly, it's the people in this room and the management of the 34 branches. And I do have absolute trust and confidence in those folks. And the second step is kind of like an action plan that was proposed in connection with the goals that Aaron had intended to achieve, and I found those worthy of pursuing. And those two together as an overall boundaries of what did I as a voter and a taxpayer say you could spend, and of course that's within the allowable limits of the whole levy process, and not one penny more. So those three together have me receptive to the budget. And just another thing, and this is very, very limited in scope, but the folks that I associate with in there, I guess I should say tolerate me to associate with them, were older folks and our social and political leanings are generally to the right. And it has been 100% when people knew, in fact, that I was one of the trustees, they were astonishingly enthusiastic for what the library, well, what you guys in this room building are, and the branches are doing. So I'm not insensitive to the very real concerns, comments that are made, but just in light of what I said and the reliance that I think we must place on, you know, the professionals here, that I'm very receptive to what's being proposed. Which probably doesn't say much for the people I associate with in Aaron.
Well, I just for the record, I'm confident of the quality of this budget is superior to what it was historically. It just what's behind the numbers. I have no question of that. Michelle or Yemi? Comments?
No,
Yeah, this is yummy. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Gordon, and yeah, I appreciate that, and that is a concern in regards to. I mean, I don't question the that. I mean, I think we all agree we want good employees. We want to be able to pay them a good way, you know, a competitive wage. But the reality, with how what has happened with the funds, especially that I believe we're sort of kept in the dark about some things, and then we realize that we're in such a deficit. We do have to catch up with that, so we have to do that somehow. So I guess my concern is I'm just sort of not sure how we're going to catch up and be able to do it financially. So that's all I have to say. I do think I wish we could have time to discuss this a little further because, you know, I think there's always a solution. But to one thing I think that Gordon said that sticks out to me is, and I think it's a good point, is that um, the what we're paying if we are increasing at an amount and we're not able, I mean, to keep up with wage increases but we don't have the funds to do that, then there's a problem. So I'm just not sure how that is going to be resolved. And if anybody wants to jump in and help me understand how that is going to be resolved, then that would be great.
Jennifer and Jeremy, I get, and all due respect here. So what do we mean when we say we don't have the funds to do this? And my understanding is we do have the funds provided we readjust the levy. These annual increases aren't etched in stone, correct me if I'm wrong. They're evaluated on an annual basis. What we're proposing for the next year is simply next year. It doesn't mean that the next 5 years there's going to be X percentage of increases to pay. Now, Jennifer and Jeremy, if you have anything to elaborate, one other point I think might clear up some confusion. When we talk about our salary study, let's just say for the two positions that Jennifer referenced, a page and a customer services associate. A customer services associate, I think, is most relevant to this conversation. Those comparisons aren't to other library workers in the region. We're looking at industries that have skill sets that are an advantage to the library. So, I mean, Jennifer, can you elaborate on that?
I have to unmute first. Yeah, when we do a compensation study, and the reason why we do it the way we do it is so we're not cherry picking any one organization or even 8 to 10 organizations what they're currently paying, because their strategy may not be a good one. And so when you go to get that data, you're using a lot of aggregate data from, in the case of our frontline, from dozens and dozens of resources that have been aggregated, and we're typically looking at, for frontline staff, we're looking at other types of customer service roles, whether that be retail, which is the closest model to how we deliver service. So we're not really comparing. There's no real government comparison outside of libraries for the particular model that we, of how we deliver the library services that the community pays for. It's closest to a retail model. So when we are getting the aggregate data for those jobs, we're not just going to the local libraries to determine and then get in some sort of compensation race with them that doesn't reflect who is actually coming to work for us. And so, yeah, that data is aggregate, and it is across multiple types of organizations, so that we're getting a good picture of what the market is actually doing and what the market will actually support, the direction that the market is going.
In reference to that, because this study occurred before I was on the board, what comparator libraries or what was this compared against? Various positions for its IT or whatever it is. Do we have a list of who we compared with?
Yeah, but we would have a list. We would have a list of databases. So we're talking about databases like Mercer, Willis Towers Watson, Comp Analyst, where they're getting from what, depending on what role we're looking at. It could be when you get into very specific librarianship type roles. Yes, the number of entities out there that are contributing data goes down. But for a lot of our positions, we're talking about, in some cases, hundreds of organizations contributing their salary data that is aggregate. And then we actually then index it for the Midwest. We index it for many of our positions. We index for not-for-profit and in some cases school districts, and for the size of organization we are, which includes looking at our revenue and the number of FTEs that we have. So we're trying to get as close to, when we price a position, we're trying to get as close to the type of organization that we are, where we're located, so that we don't want to overprice or underprice jobs. We want them to be as close to what the is happening in the market as possible, in order to remain competitive. We've never tried to be like, we're going to be the the compensation leader and everyone follow us. The reality is that in a free market, we are competing for those folks to come work for us. And if they can make a significantly more money to go work somewhere else, it does make it, whether it's Quick Trip or Menards or wherever it might be, if they can do that there, then they'll go there instead of coming to work for the library, which makes it more difficult for us to have people to deliver the services that the public is paying for. So.
Okay.
Okay. Last chance for comments.
Could I ask, Cody? You had on the screen a schedule that had number 36. I guess it was page 36 at the bottom. Could you go to the screen that you presented just prior to earlier? Forward or something.
Which one are you referring to? Which one are you trying to get to?
I don't recall the title.
The revenue or expenses or what?
It was on the, I believe in the levy.
The chart
Yeah.
or the tax revenue page?
You might be referring to the presentation. Okay.
Uh, can you go back to, please?
This way?
Are you talking about the detailed revenue page?
Yeah, that's
with the
it. Yeah,
assessed values?
right there, that, yeah.
Or this, or this?
Oh, that, right there. There you go. Thank you.
Okay.
And the tax rate impact. Just a question. Those were in, okay, I know for accounting you have to use constant dollars, but those are the actual dollars paid at that time, right?
Right.
Is that right? Okay. Um, Go to the taxes owed column. In 2016, it was right at $96. 2024, it's 123. All right, those are nominal dollars. And I'm just wondering if we had real dollars as opposed to nominal, from the 96 to the 123, what, again, we'd have to use a particular discount, which is subject to discussion. But I'm just wondering if well, it wouldn't, but under the notion that time is money, that differential would not be as significant as when we use constant dollars. The whole idea of something that costs me $50 now, next year costs me 55, is, of course, I have $5, $5 nominal dollars more. In terms of real dollars, it might be the same thing. In fact, it is the same thing. Because if there's a 10% discount, because the value of the value of the currency decreases over time, we necessarily have to have more pieces of green paper to pay for the same thing. So while that's helpful, I think it would be more helpful if in the future we have that, and do note that, again, we're comparing constant dollars, which is not misleading, but does require at least some degree of discussion.
We've actually prepared that information just for the team internally. This was, actually, it might be before your arrival, but we have something that speaks to that. So let's just circle back with Jim and talk about that work. It was done in my first year here, so.
That's something for next time.
Yep.
Next go around.
Well, as I just, and I think this would be more valuable if it's on a county by county basis. Because there are some pretty wide differences. I know from the stuff I did 2 years ago, the per household tax was for Platte, I think was the highest, and Jackson County was the lowest. Anyway, so, all right, let's move on. If there's no other questions, then I guess the motion to the board, or the motion is to recommend the full board adoption of the proposed budget. Anybody wants to make that?
Michelle, so moved.
I can't hear you, Michelle.
She said so moved.
She did, okay.
Second.
Any other discussion? Teresa?
Trustee Whitehall,
Aye.
trustee Thieves,
Yes.
trustee Pandolfi,
Aye.
trustee Cook,
No.
trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Any other business? Okay. I would ask for an adjournment, motion to adjourn.
So,
Second,
second.
Teresa?
Trustee Whitehall,
Aye.
trustee Thieves, trustee Pandolfi,
Aye.
trustee Cook,